So seven years I've been on YouTube and I've never discussed Fox News. Well, I'm going to discuss Fox News now. I'd watched a video from the channel Liberalviewer that had discussed an item that was on Fox News and Friends. Sounds a lovely programme. On the 4th of April. And what I wanted to do is I've kind of not bothered with Fox News because it's American and I'm from the UK, and so I've kind of felt it's not really within my remit. Well, it is now, right? I'm making it within my remit, I'm afraid. And what I want to do is, partly why I want to do it is because the UK perspective on broadcast news is different. We have this crazy idea that you have to have some impartiality. Now, if you have a newspaper, you don't have to have that impartiality, hence the Daily Mail, hence the Guardian, right? But if it's broadcast news, here's the Ofcom guidelines to ensure that news in whatever form is reported with due accuracy and presented with due impartiality. That applies to anything on the television, anything on the radio, and it doesn't matter whether you're saying this is the news, right, or whether it's just a kind of news magazine program but talking about the news. You have to have some impartiality, and what that usually means is you can have some prejudiced, bigoted fuck, but then you've got to have a prejudiced, bigoted fuck from the other side to balance it out, to counter what the other prejudiced, bigoted fuck had said. You can kind of get your head around that. Now, I realise that isn't the case within the United States, but Fox News, I watched this piece on Fox News and Friends. It was like watching news from Iran or from Afghanistan or somewhere like that. It was seriously freaky. Now, what I will do is I will give you a little bit of background, then I'll start going through the piece. I'm not going to remake the points that Liberalviewer had made. I've got some of my own that I want to make with regard to that. But what had happened is the council in Madison, Wisconsin, had decided they'd looked at their discrimination legislation and all the grounds that they won't allow you to discriminate on, and what they'd done is they'd added another grounds to that. So this was the list as it was beforehand, and I just need to get warmed up because it's a bit of a list, right? Okay, the list consisted of you were not allowed to discriminate on the grounds of sex, race, religion, colour, national origin or ancestry, citizenship status, age, handicap, disability, marital status, source of income, arrest record, conviction record, credit history, less than honourable discharge, physical appearance, sexual orientation, gender identity, political beliefs, familial status, student status, domestic partner status, receipt of rental assistance, the fact that the person declines to disclose their social security number, or unemployment status, other than which is your favourite cheese. There was very little that isn't covered within that list, but one that was a little bit asymmetric was that you weren't allowed to discriminate on the grounds of religion. So if you was a Christian, you couldn't be discriminated against because you was a Christian. You couldn't be denied a job because you're Christian, or because you're a Jew, or because you're a Muslim, but you could be denied a job on the grounds that you're atheist, or even if you weren't specifically a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. If you just had a religion, if you didn't fit into any of those religions, but you said, yeah, I believe in God and I'm vaguely religious, then you couldn't be discriminated for that. But if you didn't have a religion, well, fuck you, you weren't covered. And I know it's seriously controversial shit. I mean, God knows what they were thinking at the time, but they thought, actually, that seems a little bit unfair there. Why don't we just make that cover everybody? So if you've got a religion, you can't be discriminated, and we're just going to apply exactly the same thing to those that don't have a religion. I know, it's fucking far out there, isn't it? So that's what they did. This is how Fox News covered it on Fox News and Friends. Here's the first clip.
An historic and controversial move coming out of Madison, Wisconsin, an historic and controversial city. That city is now the first in the country to pass legislation listing atheism as an officially protected class.
So how will that impact discrimination lawsuits, and could other cities follow suit? We're joined now by former Department of Justice official J. Christian Adams. Good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Morning, Anna.
You know what, if there's one thing I've got to admire from this, it's their brass neck. It's absolutely brilliant. It's like what you have is you've got two hosts, right? This is just mind-boggling to me and what I'm used to in the UK for television news. You've got two hosts who are clearly absolutely prejudiced fucks, right? They're not even going to attempt any kind of impartiality. It's not as if they're partial, but they're going to try and pretend not to be. No, they're pointing firmly in one direction. And they've just got the one guest. And the one guest is pointing in exactly the same direction. So what does Fox News do to try and redress the balance and make it seem impartial? It has this graphic. It has the scales of justice graphic at the start. It has it in the backdrop. It has it at the banner at the bottom. And there's the scales of justice. And it's actually animated. And it's doing one of these all the time through the programme with Fox News and friends. And it's just showing this is all in the balance here. We're being so even-handed. I would have had so much more respect for them if instead of doing that it had just said Fox News and friends on one side of the scales, and then the scales had just gone bonk, and then it had just stopped in that position for all the rest of the piece. Then I would have at least thought, yeah, do you know what? At least you know what you're about, and you're not trying to be totally disingenuous wankers all the way through the programme. Well, let me show you a slightly more extended clip, and then you get an idea of what this is all about.
So where does this hostility come from in the first place toward Christians?
Well, this ordinance was driven by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's a group of angry atheists. They have a very a large and powerful group of supporters, and they hector governments to pass anti-Christian, anti-religious ordinances. They team up with government. For example, they were behind the IRS, getting the IRS to target and monitor sermons and homilies by Christian pastors just within the last year. So this is a group that's filled with hostility toward people of faith.
Right, so it's never just about tolerating their views, it's about attacking other people's views.
So this is just bullshit. J. Christian Adams wants to sort of say, oh, these atheists, they're just sort of obsessed with it all. It's not just about giving them protection. And talk about being obsessed. His name is John Christian Adams, but he couldn't just call himself John Adams or John C. Adams, could he? Or even just Christian Adams, which would have sounded a bit plain. No, he has to emphasise the fact that he is emphasising that he has the name Christian by calling himself J. Christian Adams. I've never ever heard anybody in my life do that with their name. Take their second name as their taken name, but still keep the initial of their first name, just so you know that is what they've done. Just so you know that is the bit that they are emphasising. But hey, lo and behold, anybody else should do something along those lines and emphasise something related to what they believe in. But the whole point, it's just a huge red herring that he's selling us here, which is that he talks about the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It really doesn't matter what the fuck their motives are. If this legislation is fair, it's fair. The legislation also applies to Christian groups, and it applies to Jewish groups and Muslim groups and Sikh groups. There will be at least Christian groups amongst those that hold atheists in a very low regard and would like to see atheists discriminated against. But that doesn't mean we should abandon those protections from Christians on the grounds to that. So even if the FFRF have all the worst motives, even if they are acting with malintent, who gives a fuck about it? That doesn't mean that every atheist should suffer as a result of that, any more than every Christian should suffer because the grounds of the Westboro Baptist Church are a bunch of bastards.
Madison City Council member Anita Weir was one of the voices behind this, and here's her explanation. She said, "This is important because I believe it's only fair that if we protect religion in all its varieties, we should also protect non-religion from discrimination. It's only fair." That does, in some sense, seem fair.
Oh, in some sense it seems fair. He's so generous, isn't he? In some sense it seems fair. Fuck, I wish he had took just a second to explain to us in what sense he doesn't think that had seemed fair.
But that's not exactly their aim, is it?
No, it never works out that way. Not only does it bring lawsuits.
The fog's lifting a little bit. It's becoming a little bit clear. And it seems that this J. Christian Adams, J. Christian Adams is actually a lot more reasonable than you would have thought. It's not actually that he's against anti-discrimination legislation on behalf of atheists. He's just mind the legislation there, but he doesn't want to actually use it. You know, he's fine having these ordinances saying you can't discriminate against atheists, but if somebody does discriminate against atheists, well, you know what's going to happen. Atheists will just start lawsuits. They'll start appealing to this legislation. I mean, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? That's the kind of thing that he can't stand. He doesn't mind the legislation being there as long as nobody actually fucking uses it.
And that means that a whole body of bureaucrats will spring up that will be tasked with hectoring people of faith, badgering, in Wisconsin, people of faith who might not want to hire somebody. You know, there's a lot of reasons why Christians or Jews might not want to hire an atheist. In fact, it's in the New Testament. It says things such as avoid them, disassociate with them in Romans, Thessalonians, Corinthians. You might have a job, for example, where you want someone who believes in a higher power. For example, maybe you're running an airline and hiring pilots who you prefer they maybe believe in hell. I mean, I know that sounds extreme, but
you know, as I come and look at this video again, I actually found I'm agreeing with him a lot more than I thought. Yes, he's absolutely right. It does sound a little bit extreme. Unless you're a Saudi Arabian Wahhabist imam, this kind of talk sounds pretty extreme. But what really gets me, look at the smirk on the presenter's face, right? He just lets it slide. They just give him deference and they just let all this bigoted shit slide. If this was to happen on a UK news programme, the presenters would be absolutely mortified. They would be fearing for their jobs or for their producers' jobs that they'd had this bigoted person on and nobody was providing any balance. And I tell you what they would do. They would provide the balance. They would be challenging him on what he was saying, but there's absolutely no challenge made. They just smirk and giggle at the fact that, haha, yes, let's just deny atheist jobs on the grounds of some bigoted bullshit to do with hell. What I would have liked to have seen to say to him is, well, what about if American Airlines decided not to appoint Jewish pilots on the grounds they've got little horns and they're in cahoots with the devil? Obviously you can't see the horns because the devil disguises them. Or what about if American Airlines decided that you weren't going to employ any Christian pilots because obviously Christians believe that they're all going to go to heaven, and so, you know, it doesn't really matter if the plane crashes or not. What would J. Christian Adams think to that? Would he just take that in exactly in good faith and say, well, there you go, you've got to take the rough with the smooth? No, he wouldn't. He'd talk about how persecuted religious people are in modern society and how despicable and how un-American this was. What a bigoted wanker he is. But what really gets me is the way that they are letting him get away with it.
yes, I do, because these people are so committed to their own version of theology. They have such hatred of Christians and Jews and publicly exercising their faith. This is a story as old as time. This weekend, guys, is a story of escaping and overcoming this kind of hatred. Christians and Jews have been putting up with this for thousands of years.
It is. He's quite right. He's right again. It is a story that goes back centuries. And if anybody from the FFRF would like to know more about persecuting Jews, they could do a lot worse than talk to somebody like J. Christian Adams, because the motive force for most of the persecution for Jews over the centuries has been done by Christians. Quite how he now perceives them both in the same boat. What a load of hypocritical hogwash.
Well, and there's, of course, a political element here. I mean, if there's no God, then the highest authority is government.
Yeah. Well, that's, of course, right, Tucker, and that's why this country was founded on exactly the opposite principle.
Exactly. And it's like the Badgers, isn't it? It's like, if there's no Badger God, then what the fuck? Who's controlling the Badgers? It's just a ludicrous suggestion. There just has to be a Badger God. And then through the cloud of my sarcasm, there's like a moment of clarity when I think, hang on, I've got sucked into this here. That wasn't if the guest had come out with this, then just sarcastic shite about badgers, but it was the hosts that had said it. And then the hosts this is where my jaw not only hits the floor, but it falls down the stairs. Then the hosts wrap up like this.
In the image of God, and that's what these people can't stand, is we live in a country that respects and treasures religious belief.
J. Christian Adams, thank you so much for being on fire with your faith this morning.
Thank you so much for being on fire with your faith. It's like, it's like a translation of, I don't know what I would expect from the Iranian state television news or something. I've never heard in my life anything approaching in the UK, a host say something like, Thank you, sir. This is a news program. This isn't the God channel. This is a fucking news program. And the host is saying, thank you so much for being on fire with your Christianity today. I mean, I just can't. If that happened in the UK, everybody would be cringing behind the sofa. And this is the really weird thing that I find about the United States, is that there's such a kind of split. There seems to be one side of the United States that is very much like Western Europe, right, are very much like the people within the Western Europe. And then there's this other side, which is kind of it's a bit like it's kind of like a Christian version of the Middle East, really. You know, it's like kind of the Saudi Arabian approach. If you can afford healthcare, then that's fine. But if you can't, well, then you're just going to have to fucking just salvage something in the gutter there while we're all going around toting guns and trying to impose religion on everybody and everything. You know, it's just like two totally different worlds. I don't know how you people manage to deal with it. I just cannot get my head around it, and it just seems so alien to me. I really enjoyed watching this, in actual fact, and it's the first time that I've done this. And if anybody has any other clips that come up, right, not historical clips, but any new clips that come up from Fox News that you'd like me to comment on, maybe I can do this sort of once every couple of months, do something on Fox News, because this was absolutely hilarious. It's just mind-boggling that this is like on a news channel. It just blows me away, really. Anyway, thank you for watching. It's brilliant, and bye for now.